paradrama tales.
Don't mind her, she's just the salad girl. That's what he said, laughing with his coworkers. And in that moment, I wasn't his girlfriend. I was a joke, a punchline. And I realized sometimes the quietest ones have to walk away just to be heard. I've always been quiet, not the mysterious kind of quiet you see in movies, just soft-spoken, observant, a little hesitant in big groups. I'm the one who listens more than I talks, who smiles politely when I don't know what to say, who doesn't mind silence. It's not because I'm scared. It's not because I don't have thoughts. It's just who I am. And over time, I've learned how that kind of quiet can make people uncomfortable. They expect noise, reaction. They think silence is emptiness when it's actually full of intention, full of restraint. My boyfriend always said he liked that about me. He said I was refreshing, that I wasn't like the women who always tried to steal the spotlight. And at first, I believed he meant that. He made me feel like being myself was enough. I don't eat meat not because of a loud ideology or some agenda. I just don't like it. That's it. It's a personal thing, part of who I am. I've never forced it on anyone. I've sat across from people eating steaks, burgers, ribs, and said nothing. I never needed the world to adapt to me. I just needed space to exist without being mocked. But somewhere along the way, my quiet stopped being endearing. It became something to poke fun at, a subtle punchline he'd use in front of friends. She's shy, he'd say, or she probably won't say much, like I wasn't even there. And I'd smile through it, until one day that smile cracked. Because the truth is, when you're quiet by nature, people assume you'll tolerate anything. They think you'll never leave, that you'll swallow the discomfort, laugh at the joke, and stay in your seat. But what they don't realize is that silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it means we're listening closely enough to know exactly when it's time to get up and go. When he told me we were going out to dinner with his coworkers, I smiled and said, sure. But inside my stomach turned just a little. Meeting new people has never been easy for me, especially when it's his world, his people. I wasn't afraid of them being rude or unkind. I was afraid of being invisible, or worse, seen just enough to be misunderstood. He thrives in rooms like that. Loud voices, fast jokes, hands moving as fast as the conversation. He can hold a room like it's second nature. I admire that about him, I truly do. But when I walk into a place like that, I feel like a shadow trying to find a place to stand. I picked my outfit carefully that night. Something nice, not flashy. I even practiced my smile in the mirror, just enough to seem warm, not nervous. He didn't notice, but that was okay. I didn't need him to notice everything, just that I was trying. The restaurant was trendy, loud, and packed. His coworkers were already seated when we arrived, half laughing, half talking over one another. I introduced myself with a soft hi and a polite smile. No one really heard it, and I wasn't surprised. I sat beside him and tried to follow the conversation. They joked, teased each other, talked about work, gossip I couldn't keep up with. I nodded when appropriate, laughed when it seemed right. I didn't want to make a scene, I just wanted to blend in, do my part, and make the night go smoothly for him. So, when the waitress came and asked for my order, I kept it simple. I asked for a salad. Not because I wanted to be difficult, not because I was trying to make a statement, just because that's what I was comfortable eating. But in that moment, I didn't realize how easily one harmless choice could become a stage, or how quickly the person sitting beside you can turn the spotlight into a weapon. She hadn't even finished writing down my order when he said it loud enough for the table to hear, casual enough to sound like a joke. Don't mind her, he chuckled. She's just the salad girl. Doesn't eat real food. And just like that, I disappeared. Not physically, of course. I was still sitting there, still smiling that weak automatic smile, still holding my napkin in my lap like it was the only thing anchoring me to the chair. But inside I had evaporated. The table burst into laughter. One of his coworkers added, "Better get used to rabbit food if you're staying with him." Another raised a glass and said, "Cheers to dating women who can fit in the passenger seat." I laughed, or something that sounded like laughing. Just enough to make it seem like I could take a joke. Just enough to not make him uncomfortable. Just enough to not be the overly sensitive girlfriend who couldn't hang. He didn't look at me after he said it. He just kept laughing, kept talking like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something small but sharp, like a paper, cut across the dignity I thought I still had. It wasn't the first time he'd teased me, not even the first time in front of people. But this time, it felt different. This time, it wasn't just about food. It was about identity, respect, power. and the way the room laughed that told me all I needed to know. No one saw it as cruel, no one paused to see how I reacted, because I wasn't the person they were talking to. I was the person they were talking about. And when that happens, when the man you love turns you into a joke for the approval of strangers, you start to wonder how many other things he'll trade for a cheap laugh. When the laughter died down and the waitress walked away, I leaned in just a little. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I just said quietly, "Hey, what you said back there wasn't okay." I thought he might blink, apologize under his breath, maybe squeeze my hand beneath the table. Instead, he rolled his eyes. "You're being sensitive again?" He muttered, picking up his water like I just asked him to solve world hunger. "Don't embarrass me in front of my friends." I froze. That was the moment. Not the salad, not the joke, not even the laughter. That was the moment the air shifted. Because in just 10 words he told me who mattered more to him in that room, and it wasn't me. He wasn't sorry he hurt me. He was sorry I didn't stay quiet about it. He wasn't ashamed of what he said. He was annoyed I wasn't in on the joke. And suddenly I saw the night with new eyes. The table, the drinks, the laughter, it was all a stage. And I had just refused to play my part. I sat there for a moment, swallowing the lump in my throat. I felt my cheeks burn, not just from embarrassment, but from anger I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. I thought about all the other times I'd let things slide. The harmless jabs, the just teasing, the public jokes at my expense that I'd brushed off because I didn't want to seem dramatic. But now, sitting in that crowded restaurant surrounded by people who didn't even know my last name, I realized something crystal clear. If I stayed, I'd be choosing his comfort over my self-worth. So I reached for my purse, stood up slowly, and said, just loud enough for him to hear, "Enjoy your real food." Then I walked out. Not with drama, not with tears, just with dignity. The air outside the restaurant was cooler than I remembered, or maybe it just felt that way because I could finally breathe. I didn't storm out. I didn't slam a door or throw a drink in anyone's face like some dramatic movie scene. I just walked shoulders back, head up, feeling both shaky and strangely grounded, like my legs weren't entirely sure what I'd just done, but my heart knew it was right. I didn't have a car that night. We came together in his. So I pulled out my phone, checked the bus schedule, and took a seat on the bench under the amber glow of the streetlight. I could still hear muffled laughter behind the restaurant windows. I wondered if anyone even noticed I was gone. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't shrinking myself to fit into someone else's comfort zone. I wasn't laughing when I didn't feel like it. I wasn't nodding to keep the peace. I was just choosing myself. And that's not easy when you're used to being the quiet one, when you're used to being the peacekeeper, when you've spent years believing that love means letting things slide, swallowing discomfort, and making space for someone else's ego. But that night, I learned something important. Choosing to walk away isn't weakness. It's strength in its most silent form. On that bus ride home, no one looked at me. No one asked if I was okay. I was just another girl heading somewhere alone on a Saturday night. But inside, something had shifted. A boundary had been drawn. A line had been spoken in the language of action, not words. Because when the world expects you to shrink and you choose instead to stand, even if it's only to walk out the door, you take back something precious. Your voice, your dignity, yourself. My phone started buzzing before I even got off the bus. At first, it was just one message. What the hell was that? Then more followed in rapid bursts. "You embarrassed me. My coworkers were asking what was wrong with you. It was just a joke. You totally overreacted. Not once did he ask if I got home safe. Not once did he say he was sorry. Instead, the focus was on how I had made him look, how I had ruined the night, how I had made him feel awkward in front of people he sees every day. Apparently, me quietly leaving after being mocked in front of strangers wasn't a cry for respect. It was a personal attack on his reputation. It was almost ironic. He could laugh at me to get a cheap chuckle from his coworkers, but the moment I decided I didn't want to be the punchline, I was the problem. That's what struck me most in those texts, not the words themselves, but the pattern they revealed. This wasn't new. It had just finally become loud enough for me to hear. There were times before when I'd expressed hurt and he'd called it overthinking, when I'd asked for more kindness and he'd said I was too emotional, when I needed support and he gave me silence or worse, sarcasm. But this time, I had done something he didn't expect. I disrupted the performance. I didn't smile through the discomfort. I didn't play along, I walked away. And he didn't know how to handle that. Because people like him rely on your silence, on your fear of being called dramatic. They call it a joke so they don't have to deal with the reality that it was actually disrespect. So, as I stared at those messages lighting up my screen, I realized he wasn't trying to win me back. He was just trying to regain control of the version of me who wouldn't dare leave the table. But that version, she was gone. People think pain has to be loud to be real. They think if no one screamed, slammed a door, or stormed off in tears, it probably wasn't that bad. But let me tell you, some of the deepest wounds come in whispers. They come in jokes. There's a term for it, micro-humiliation. It's when someone chips away at your dignity in small, subtle moments. A joke here, a jab there. Comments brushed off as just teasing, but layered with something sharper underneath. You don't always realize it's happening at first. You laugh along because what else are you supposed to do? You tell yourself not to take it personally. You tell yourself you're too sensitive, and slowly, bit by bit, you start to believe that maybe you are the problem. That night at the restaurant wasn't just about salad. It wasn't about food at all. It was about being turned into a caricature of myself. It was about being made small in front of strangers. It was about someone I trusted choosing public approval over private respect. And the reason it cut so deep is because I didn't see it coming. Because love is supposed to be safe. It's supposed to be the one place where you can be soft and quiet and you without having to defend that. So when that space turns against you even subtly, it shakes you. You start questioning more than the joke. You start questioning the whole foundation. Maybe some people think I overreacted. Maybe to them it was harmless. But here's the truth. Micro-humiliations add up. They collect in your bones. And one day it just takes one last small laugh at your expense to tip the scale. And that's when you decide, no more. No more apologizing for feeling hurt. No more minimizing my own pain. No more giving someone else permission to shrink me. Because if someone truly loves you, they won't need to mock you to feel bigger. They'll protect you even when it's inconvenient. I've been told my whole life that I'm the quiet one, the girl who smiles politely, the one who never stirs the pot, who lets things slide. And for a long time, I thought that was strength, keeping the peace, being low maintenance, easy to love. But there's a difference between being quiet and being small. That night at that table, I realized I had been making myself smaller for him for months. I'd edited my words, laughed at things that hurt, and pretended I was okay, with jokes that chipped away at who I really was. Not because I was weak, but because I didn't want to be difficult. But here's what I've learned. There's nothing noble about swallowing pain just to make someone else more comfortable. There's nothing brave about letting yourself be diminished for the sake of someone else's charm. I may be quiet, but I will no longer be small. I will not sit at tables where my value is up for debate. I will not stay silent just to keep the mood light. I will not smile while being erased. Being quiet doesn't mean I lack conviction. It doesn't mean I don't notice. It doesn't mean I'll stay. It means that when I finally speak or stand or walk away, you should know that I've already given this moment more thought than you ever did. And if that makes me too sensitive, too serious, too much, so be it. I'd rather be too much for someone who jokes at my expense than not enough for myself. Because respect isn't loud. But when it's missing, even the quietest among us can feel the thunder of that absence. And now I choose differently. Not because I changed who I am, but because I finally remembered who I've always been. I didn't leave that night to prove a point. I left because I finally understood that staying would cost me more than walking away ever could. For so long, I thought love meant patience, tolerance, understanding. But now, I know real love doesn't ask you to disappear just to keep the other person comfortable. Real love sees you, respects you, speaks with you, not about you. I don't hate him. I don't wish him pain. But I do hope one day he realizes the difference between being funny and being cruel, and that sometimes the people who say the least are carrying the heaviest weight. If you're someone who's ever been called too sensitive, if you've ever laughed along just to keep the peace, if you've ever walked home in silence and asked yourself, was it really that bad? Let this be your reminder. Yes, your feelings matter. No, you're not overreacting. And most importantly, you deserve better than being someone's joke. Thank you for listening to my story. And if it resonated with you, you're not alone. There are so many of us who've walked out of rooms quietly, but walked back into ourselves stronger. So, stay with us. Subscribe for more stories that remind us what strength really sounds like. Sometimes it's loud, but often it's quiet, just like us.